Hey guys, it's Payne. I'm really excited to introduce a brand new show to Bet the Board that combines sports and alternative investing, the very first of its kind. Sports betting and collectibles converging is inevitable. Let me tell you why. Sports cards and memorabilia are another way to get money into the market and do it without limit restrictions or the substantial hold you're accustomed to with sports betting. Whether you collected cards as a kid and are looking to get back into the hobby, this podcast is for you. If you've been collecting cards for years, this podcast will make you think and operate more efficiently. Are you in real estate? The parallels to investing in sports cards and memorabilia are uncanny. You're on Wall Street. Well, listen close. The best sports cards have outperformed the S&P 500 by 6x since 2013. And during the 2008 market crash, sports cards held up better than the S&P 500. Bet the Board, in conjunction with PWCC, presents CardBoard Chat, an entertaining, sophisticated, and informative podcast that combines sports, analytics, betting, cards, and memorabilia. Without further ado, this is CardBoard Chat with Jesse Craig, a leading figure in the collectible space, and me, Payne. We're back after a week off. Tell us why we were off last week, Jesse. Fill us in.
Yeah, took a little trip to South Dakota, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, for a bachelor party with 19 guys to go ice fishing. Not something that I would say is ever on my bucket list, but would highly recommend it after going. It was an absolute blast. Bunch of complete degenerate guys that pound Keystone Lights and Busch Lights like you wouldn't believe. So I'm sitting here drinking my red wine like a freaking snob, and these youngins are sitting there pounding beer. But it was honestly a blast, and it was colder than hell, but it was a ton of fun.
I saw pictures, and the first thing I said, and most of our listeners now, I don't leave the house if it's not warmer than 50 degrees. I'm pretty much bunkered in. But once,
oh yeah, Mr. Shorts and workout gear all the time, huh?
once I kind of mentally get over that hump, it looked like it was a blast. Yes, you bust my balls for wearing the Lululemon to some of the card shows, but I got to tell you, like, I'm not there to impress any men, most of which optional showering is involved, and so yeah, I'm not really trying to impress other men.
Oh yeah. Optional showering is definitely a key to card shows, but look, that's when I see it. That's when I see you the most, anyway. So that is usually the attire that you have on when we're hanging, is your kind of leisure Lululemon gear, and that's not a dig. I like Lulu. We got Lulu up here. I like wearing comfy gym clothes too. I get it. You can do that in Miami. You can get away with that. I can't get away with that in Portland outside of like 3 or 4 months out of the year.
Yeah, you're very much a jean guy. Very much a jean guy.
Yeah, big jean guy.
Okay. Speaking of seeing each other at card shows, that was a great lead-in, of which I don't think either of us thought would happen, but we're going to start talking about some of the best card shows to attend, because it's beginning to be that time of year, and how to best navigate them. So I think we want to start with maybe some of the shows that we like to attend, maybe a sleeper or two that could be one that you like, and then, how to attack some of these card shows, because I think sometimes they can be very overwhelming for collectors and certainly first-timers.
They can, and we put this topic on the docket because it is difficult, first of all, to figure out which one to go to if you want to actually travel to a card show, because now they become so popular and everybody wants to start a card show. So as a company, we get a lot of people reaching out to us. They're starting new shows, start a new show. And, we have to pick and choose which ones, from a budget perspective, which ones we spend our resources to go to and set up to take in, inventory and consignments and vault assets and whatnot. So I've got a pretty good idea which ones I think are the better shows to go to. There's a handful of them. I might be missing someone because there's so many shows now, but for me, obviously the National, that's the easy low-hanging fruit winner that is at the end of every July, early August, every single summer. It's every other year in Chicago, and then it could be Cleveland, Baltimore, Atlantic City on the odd years. But this year it's in Chicago, so that is an absolute must. And that show is probably, what would you say, Payne, like 15, 20x any other show, maybe more.
Yeah.
Size-wise.
Yeah. It's a monster. It's overwhelming.
Massive.
Yeah.
It's very that is overwhelming. So then the question is, well, to kind of, pop your proverbial card show cherry, do you just go to a local show and just kind of walk around and get a vibe and get a feel for it? Now, if you've done that already, okay, maybe you want to explore out and go travel to a bigger show. There's shows like the Burbank show, which is, I believe, the weekend of February 9th coming up. Great show, West Coast show, beautiful weather. I highly recommend going to that show if you can. The Las Vegas card show is a good one. The Dallas card show, they do about 4 of those a year, 5 of those a year. Maybe it might be up to 6 now. It might be every other month. That show is established, and that's the thing too to consider is how many times have they ran a show here? Are there people that consistently come back to the show? Because then you get a good turnover in inventory. You get fairly good dealers that have new stuff, and those are the kind of shows that you want to go to as well. So the Dallas card show is a great one. The Mint, which is in Las Vegas at the end of March. This is the second year they're doing it, but it's a little bit more of an elevated show. It's in the MGM in Vegas. Great show. A lot of good panels and discussions going on at that show. So it's a little bit more than your standard, hey, walk the floor, buy and sell. You can actually learn more at that show, which I think is good from time to time because that is kind of turning into what was the industry summit. I believe that's more of an elevated, newer industry summit. And then there's a handful of other good shows in other parts of the country. And there's new shows popping up all the time. So it's almost hard to choose, what are the best shows to go to, but that's kind of my opinion off the top of my head for the best shows that I would probably look at attending if you're going to travel.
Yeah, the National's the obvious choice. I think that's more of a gathering of everyone as well, which is nice. Dallas, you mentioned, I try to get to that once a year. I've actually heard great things about the Midwest Monster, and our buddy Andy runs that. Yep. Have you?
Fair. Yeah, I left that one out, but you are 100% correct. That is the biggest show in the Midwest, and there's a lot of really, really big staple card shops that participate in that, and it is a great show. And I actually haven't been able to attend. I've taken a step back from going to shows, but my guys have always loved going to that show and say it gets really good foot traffic, great dealers, and that is a good show as well.
Same, I haven't been there. I've also heard great things about the Burbank. I heard that the first show was epic. Have you done the Atlanta show? Anything there?
Yeah, Culture Collision was good. Have they done 2 of them? There's a third one. There's one coming up, but Raphael puts that on. It's a great show. I'd recommend that one too. If it's closer to you, that's actually a really good show that you could go to. I think it's in February. Does that sound right?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Okay.
So once you've kind of navigated the card show schedule, what are some of the things you would tell first-time showgoers or even guys that have gone a couple times that might still feel overwhelmed? What are some of the things that you would do kind of in preparation before you go, almost like a checklist of sorts?
Yeah, I think for me, it's not as much prep for the show as what you do when you get there. But it really depends on the person, right? Like, are you looking for one card? Are you looking for multiple cards? Your search parameters while you're at the show is kind of the key to it. So I guess that's the only prep that for me that would really go into it, because while you're walking the show with the internet these days, as long as the show has decent service, you're able to look up pricing on your phone and whatnot. So the only real advice that I have when walking the floor is, make sure you know how much time you have to be at the show, because as you know, it can take an entire day, depending on the size of the show, to really walk every table if you're looking for something specific. So that's the biggest thing too. It's like, how much time you got? Do you need to do a quick browse, or can you actually go and, strike up conversations with some of these dealers that are sitting at the tables? Because one thing too is not all inventory is typically out on the table. Sometimes these guys got stuff behind the scenes in boxes and safes. And so, sparking up conversations and talking to somebody about what you're really looking for, that's a good way to get insider information. Maybe there's a guy walking the show and they had that hit their table recently, but they didn't buy it, but they know the guy, they have his number, and now they can, text him and have him come back to the table for you, right? Because there's a lot of stuff walking the floor that's not at the table. So sparking up conversations with anybody can lead to potential, deals getting made, whether it's buying or selling. The next piece of advice would be, the sticker prices on the cards is not what they're going to take. They'll take less. They will always take less. And so go ahead and get your negotiating hat on and get ready. And look, there's going to be times where there's a comp the day before, a real comp at 30% less than what they have it marked at. Let's say they've got a card at $1,000 and it sold yesterday for $700. They won't come off of $900. Okay, walk away. You're going to get that. There's all the time people that sometimes, these dealers sometimes don't want to come down to reality. Some are more realistic than others, and they do not want to accept whatever a recent comp was, and they're going to stay firm because they think it's going to go back up or whatever it may be. But the price on the card is not what they'll typically take, but also they might not listen to you if you give them a solid comp.
Right. I mean, sometimes they're just into the card for a little bit more than current market, and to your point, want to hold on to that a little bit. But I think, just having a plan, because I keep coming back to it being a little bit more overwhelming, and just what type of personality are you as well. It's different just buying stuff online when you're by yourself than actually having to have conversations and dealing with other people. But I think before you step foot in the building, right, know what you're going after, because there's so many cool assets you'll see, and you're going to be tempted to spend like a drunken sailor. Cards that you have never seen before will be there, specifically at the National or Dallas, but know what you're going after, right? Make your list, put it in order of importance. To your point, cash is king. You typically get better deals with cash than using PayPal or Venmo for obvious reasons. And I think you also want to bring additional ammo with you, right? Lots of dealers are willing to trade now. So bring in cards to the show that you're not in love with anymore, or you've been looking to sell anyways, or you bought low and you have a lot of room and you might not want that tax hit, so you can trade it into something a little bit larger. So having that added ammo is key. And there's situations where, you might have 3 or 4 Mike Trout rookies and you're trying to move them into one larger Mike Trout, but you don't have the actual money to do it. Bringing some trade assets with you can help get that done. I also think, and ask first, because there's some old people that don't like it, but take some pictures so you know what booth certain cards are at, right? So you can kind of go back in a bit to your point at the top, Jesse. Sometimes you just want to navigate the entire show, see what's there before you ultimately pounce. You might see that card that you wrote down on your list that's like 7th, right? Take a pick, walk the rest of the show, then come back. Obviously, there's some risks someone else buys it, but the last thing you want to do is buy that card, then 20 minutes later, you see the top card on your list and you're out of funds, right? So that's big. And then, it's just some things that you'll learn along the way that seem obvious, right? Water. Right, granola bars, trail mix, hand sanitizer. Bring the extra charger or battery for your phone.
We're going the health route too,
right?
Huh?
Like,
look at that. Hey, everybody out there, stay hydrated at the shows, okay?
Well, I mean, the last thing you want to do is wait in that damn line that's like out the door as everyone's trying to get some hockey rink pizza, and you're like just wasting time in that line trying to get water. It's not very difficult to bring your own water.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I think actually the best thing you said was hand sanitizer, because that
showering in the morning, deodorant.
Please, for the love of everybody else at the show, do all that.
Okay. Anything else? Any additional tips?
I think that's a pretty good baseline to go to the show. It's not rocket science, but like I said, I wouldn't go with as much of a plan as I think you would. You're more methodical from exactly what you want. Yep. I'm more of a peruser and see what kind of fits my fancy
on a whim.
Day.
Yeah, whichever way the wind blows.
When it comes to buying cards, there's a lot of times I buy something I just did not expect I'd want to buy that, and I buy it and love it.
And then 3 months later, you're like, ooh, that might have been bad.
That happens.
Let's go. It's time, folks. That's right. We're going to discuss undervalued and overvalued cards, or maybe even some memorabilia assets, potentially some players. Is it time to buy, sell, or hold on to these assets or players? We'll give you some opinions and back it up.
It's time looks pretty interesting this week, because there's a guy on your list that I'm quite fond of. And it's a player that you believe is vastly underrated. I'm not going to steal your thunder, but I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, I agree.
Good. I'm glad. I figured you would, Mr. Miami. Steve Wade, Mr. Dwayne Wade. Look, here's a guy who he won a championship with in my opinion, a pretty banged up old team, right? In 2006, he was a Finals MVP. He won his first championship with a washed up Shaq, Gary Payton, Antoine Walker, and Jason Williams. I mean, the guy averaged 34.5 points a game in the finals. The next highest on their team was Antoine Walker with 13. I mean, that is a massive discrepancy for an NBA, for an NBA finals to have a guy average basically 35 and the next highest player is less than 15 points a game. He's a 3-time NBA champion. He won two titles with Braun and with Bosch. He's a 13-time All-Star, 2-time NBA first team, 3-time second team. He's part of, what's going to go down as one of the greatest draft classes in NBA history. He's got the iconic 2003 Exquisite as, a rookie brand around his cards. We talk a lot about that product and how amazing it is and revolutionary. And so for a guy like Dwayne Wade to have 3 championships, which is only one behind LeBron. I mean, let's keep it real. It's one behind Braun, and his cards sell at about a tenth of what LeBron's do, if not less, depending on the asset. It's too big of a discrepancy, in my opinion, and I think his cards should just be worth more money.
Did you get clearance bringing up Antoine Walker's name on a gambling podcast?
I actually don't know a lot about him in gambling besides that he blew his entire load. That's about all I know.
That's accurate. In terms of Dwayne Wade, like, we're at the age now where you can see a player's entire career evolution. And I remember watching Wade at Marquette making that deep run in the NCAA tournament his final season.
Triple-double.
Yep. And then the impact he immediately had on the Heat organization, multiple championships. He played both ends of the court pretty well, had a ton of blocks for a guard. He won a ring as a leader in the key cog of his team and then added 2 more with one of the first super teams. He does have that branding in terms of, right, Wade County, Mr. 305, all of those things. Everything about Dwayne Wade should lead to larger prices, I feel like. And I use Wade all the time to bust balls with Kobe guys like you, because when it was all said and done, Wade had the better career player efficiency rating. Top 25 in career per, right? Top 50 in win share. And there's plenty of great players in that realm, but Wade is top 50 and won multiple championships. There isn't a reason that Kobe Bryant's market cap is nearly 20x Dwayne Wade's. That, to me, is the right comparison. It's not necessarily the LeBron comparison. It's the comparison to Kobe Bryant, and nobody likes when I mention that.
Of course not. It's Kobe Bryant. But it's fair. And I get it. I use LeBron as a comparison because they're on the same team. LeBron's got 4 championships. Now, Kobe does have 5. So that puts him in a different echelon than D Wade. But you're right. When you look at efficiencies and where he stands on all-time lists, D Wade was very efficient. He was just a very, very solid basketball player that just does not get the love that he deserves. And there are people like that in our market where sometimes it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's not like D-Wade doesn't have an amazing brand, but doesn't have a bad brand, right? It's not Kawhi Leonard, but it's also not Steph Curry. So I don't know the disconnect with D-Wade. I'd say his brand is above average, and I think that it should resonate more with pricing for his trading cards, and we just really haven't seen it. So I think there's, for anyone listening that loves D-Wade, I think there's an opportunity over the next 5 to 10 years for a lot of upside with his cards.
Yeah, I completely agree there. Now, transitioning sports, I continue to be the old head with a lot of baseball here. And I think we all know how good Ken Griffey Jr. was in his prime, had some numbers, right? The home run numbers, was great defensively. Unfortunately, the career was, a little, I would say, cut short with injuries. Seasons ended early. But the one card that's really interesting to me, because it's from a great set, it's the 1999 Upper Deck Century Legends Epic Signature Century Gold Ken Griffey Jr. autograph to 100 copies. And I think this has a lot of the elements we talk about with important sets of important players. This was the first year Upper Deck created Century Legends. So it was a pretty groundbreaking production from that perspective, because the goal was combining Hall of Famers and legends with the best current players. And if you think about how that set got created, it was basically popular publications at the time helping figure out which players belonged in that set. So the Sporting News did a countdown of the greatest players of the 20th century. TSN did best active players. And then there was also some drama involved in the set where certain players that made the set weren't actually in it. Upper Deck couldn't reach an agreement with Sandy Koufax's team, so his card didn't make production, although he's numbered in the set. Upper Deck wouldn't include Pete Rose because of the lifetime ban. And then you had Joe DiMaggio, who unfortunately passed, and it kicked a clause in his licensing deal, so Upper Deck had to pull his cards from the set after production. So there's a lot of interesting elements there with this. It's just a classic baseball set, specific to the Griffey within this, the Epic Signature Century Gold Auto. It's on card. It's hand numbered to 100 copies in beautiful blue ink. It's just a great card, and it has a basketball equivalent, which is going to help any collector investor play that comp game, right? If Wilt Chamberlain or Michael Jordan sell for X, Griffey has to sell for Y. So it's just iconic set, first of its kind, gold, serial numbered, iconic player. It's out of baseball season. It just checks all the boxes I'm looking for in making a purchase right now, Jesse.
Yeah, I love this card. I've mentioned it before on the show, but I'm a sucker for hand numbering. I really do love it. And Griffey has one of my favorite autographs of all time. It's a very beautiful, kind of intricate autograph. He takes his time with it. So I love Griffey's autograph. I'm a Pacific Northwest guy, even though I'm a Red Sox fan. I still grew up loving Ken Griffey Jr. He's got one of the prettiest swings in the history of baseball. It's just a gorgeous swing. And this card, what's kind of crazy is this card is, it's really hard to find. You only see one or two of these sell maybe every year, right?
Yeah.
It's a really difficult card to find. Now, did I read the pop report right? PSA's only graded 7 out of the 100, and BGS, I couldn't find much. Their pop report was a little messed up on this card. They might have only graded 2 of these. Does that sound right?
It sounds right. And the last time one sold publicly, I believe, was about a year ago, and I thought the price was really light. I wasn't in the market for one at the time like an idiot, and now wish I would have, but I was actually in a movie theater, and this was ending, and I was like, boy, this card's going to go for like $15,000. And I didn't bid on it. It ended up going for like $7,500. It was in a PSA 9. The autograph was bold. It was dead centered, and I just had immediate regret afterwards.
Yeah, I've had those too. But so if the population information is correct, that means that only 9 out of the 100, assuming there's none graded by SGC, 9 out of the 100 only have been graded, which is kind of crazy. That might be the lowest percentage of any cards show numbered to 50 or 100 I've ever heard. That's a very minuscule percentage of that card. So they're hard to find in general. Who knows how many are still, because these are pack pulled. Correct me if I'm wrong, Payne.
Yes.
They're pack pulled?
Yes.
Okay, great. So that, how many are still in packs? Right?
Yep.
Must be a lot. I guess I might have to do some eBay box hunting here.
There's a
little purchase here
on eBay in PSA 10. It's a pop 1. It is listed for, I believe, like $30,000 right now. And
there's no 10s for Griffey, correct?
You're putting me on the spot. I'm not quite sure there. I can check the pop.
Yeah, out of the only 7 that have been graded, there's I think it's 2 or less.
Gotcha.
It could be 2, 1, or 0.
Yeah.
But tough card. To top it all off, what's kind of cool is you can do the father-son combo because senior's in the set as well. So getting father and son hand numbered, autographed, pretty cool. Just you're right, iconic set. Undervalued. You never see them come up. We could have put this on Damn That's a Ghost, but regardless, it's a good pick this week.
Pick a number, any number, whatever it may be. We got a number inside, but we want a magic number. All right, this is where we're gonna pick a few big cards that enter in an auction over the next couple of days, and we're gonna try and guess how much they sell for in advance. Throw out a number. We got one too.
This is the segment that everybody seems to love, magic number time. And I was looking at some of the cards. I gave you one. You sent back 2 more over. I think we did some good work here looking at some of these cards. I like the first 2 that we're going to talk about. Then you sent me into the deep waters again on the third one.
I did that on purpose,
I know you
baby.
did.
Let's go.
I'm sure when you picked that one out, you're like, boy, this is going to eat at him. I like this.
Yeah.
And as soon as I
Payne's
saw
going to
it,
see this and go, what the hell?
as soon as I saw it, I was like, what the hell is going on here? And it immediately sent me into searching for comps, of which were difficult to find, of course. But the first...
Exactly. Well,
go ahead.
Look, I got to do that because I'm getting my ass kicked, okay? Now, I know your strategy. You're Mr. Under guy. You just play the low ball all the time with the market pulling back a little bit. You've been very successful doing that. I guess I'm Mr. Optimism. I don't know.
I think that's what you believe. It's just good market research. But in general, I like to bet unders in sports as well. So I'm typically an under guy. But the first card, iconic, absolute classic, 1958 Topps football, Jim Brown rookie in an SGC 7 grade with exceptional eye appeal that puts it in the top 15% of all copies graded an SGC 7, and you can see why. So, talk us to a little bit about this card here, why it's important, and give us a number here.
Yeah, I mean, Jim Brown is arguably one of the greatest running backs of all time, if not the greatest. And his rookie card, 1958 Topps, it is notorious for being off-center and then the print being terrible. So this card has a lot of black print on it, and with that you get what we call snow quite a bit. So it's just kind of like little white speckles all over the black ink, and finding a copy that has minimal or no snow is very difficult. And this graded an SGC 7, but it has a PWCC, so we think it's in the top 15% of all 7s that exist. And to be honest with you, I've seen a lot of 8s that are way worse than this. I mean, it is a really, really, really pretty 7. I love this card. Finding this card nicer than this. I mean, I could go as far as saying there might be some 9s out there that don't look as good as this 7. I mean, that's how nice this 7 is. It's kind of surprising it almost didn't get an S sticker, to be honest. So this card being an SGC 7,
you're saying
PWCC,
Brent was slacking a little bit here?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what he's thinking. But I've got this card at 11,300.
Whoosh. Okay. So the first thing I will say is the copy is nearly dead centered. You hit it perfectly, right? The print, the registration, it looks immaculate for the grade. You hit on the black background. It's deep and vibrant. There's very little snowing there. If you're a football collector and you love vintage, right? This 1958 Topps Jim Brown is easily one of the top 5 vintage football cards of all time. It is that important to the football card market. It's a must-have for any collector. I believe you guys sold an Beckett 8.5 recently. Mm-hmm. What did that go for?
That was also stickered.
I'm putting you on the spot. I didn't mean to do that.
I think it was it's fine. I think it was an E. Keep talking. I'll do a little research while you're talking.
And I think when you put this card in, the importance that it is, and you think about PSA grading less than 5,000 total copies, SGC around 1,300 copies. Imagine if there were less than 7,000 shares of an elite S&P 500 stock, because this is what this card is relative to the football collecting space. And just doubling down on how condition sensitive this card is, right? PSA is only graded 11 examples higher than an 8.5. SGC doesn't have an example graded higher than 8.5. I'm actually going to come in a little bit under you. I know, big surprise.
Oh, shocker.
Big shock, right? I'm going to come in at $9,900 on this one. I do think, though, it's a fantastic copy, and I was candidly looking at it for myself because I have a PSA 7, and it doesn't look nearly as good, and my mind was I may try to upgrade the eye appeal here, buy this one, and then send the PSA 7 in.
Got it. Yeah. So just for reference, the 8.5, the Beckett 8.5 with a PWCC sold in November premiere for 40,800.
Okay.
So you said 9,900. I was at 11.3. Okay, we'll see.
We got a decent
Maybe
gap
you
here.
Bidding on this. Yeah, you bidding on this thing might help me out for a change.
Yes, and I will probably be giving it a fair run. So I probably didn't put that into account when I did that. This next one, also a vintage card. I sent you this. I immediately saw it and was like, oh, this has to make the list. It is a set that we've talked about pretty frequently, the 1909 T206 Ty Cobb. But this one is the bat on shoulder variation. It's got the Sovereign cigarettes back in an SGC 5.5 with superior eye appeal. So that is top 5% of all SGC 5.5s. I mean, it is just, it's absolutely stunning. Would you like to lead or you want me to go for it?
You gave me this card. I'll let you lead.
Okay. So talking about this card just a little bit of the vintage baseball sets, there's like three head honchos, right? It's this 1909 T206 set. It's the 1933 Gowdy. It's the 1952 Topps. When we've talked about this set before, what makes it so special is all of the different tobacco company backs, right? The back of the card. There's 16 different tobacco companies that were a part of this set. Piedmont is far and away the most common. You got Sweet Caporal is second, Polar Bear, Old Mill to a lesser extent, and then you have Sovereign. It's the scarcest of the, better backs. About 4% of all the PSA T206 graded copies, all players have a Sovereign back, so it's rare among the popular cigarette backs. There's two different colors of this bat on shoulder pose. You have the forest green, then you have the apple green. This copy is the latter. There's also three different series of releases within the T206 cards. That's what makes this set just so far ahead of its time, right? Like we talk about all the variations with Panini sets and stuff like that, but this is really interesting. So the first iteration's 150 subjects, the second one 350 subjects, and then you have 460 subjects. This Ty Cobb is part of the 150 subject release. It's second in terms of rarity within those three. SGC is only graded 25 Sovereign bat on shoulder Ty Cobbs total. This is the second highest graded copy. PSA has graded 11 of the Sovereign 150 subjects. I think going first here is going to do you a favor, because if I had to look at your number, you're probably going to be lower than I was. There was a PSA 5 that sold in June of 2021 for about 20 grand. And Ty Cobb's market is up about 45%. We talk about this all the time, right? The market is down a little bit. You kind of want to put your money in a safe haven. What's more safe than vintage baseball? And I would very much compare an SGC 5.5 with superior eye appeal to a PSA 5, especially when we're talking vintage cards. I'm going to come in probably higher than I should. I'm going to come in at $29,400 on this, Jesse.
Whew. That is pretty high.
That was the reaction. My guess is if you went first, you didn't have a 2 in front.
Trading cards and memorabilia have seen incredible growth as an alternative investment. The company leading the growth? PWCC Marketplace. PWCC Marketplace runs the largest weekly auction of authenticated sports cards, Pokemon cards, comic books, video games, and memorabilia in the world. PWCC Marketplace also has more than 65,000 items listed in their fixed price marketplace that you can make an offer on right now. Head over to pwccmarketplace.com and see why they're the best option for buying and selling trading cards, memorabilia, and all of your collectibles.
Well, okay, so this is what's interesting about this. I did not expect you to come that high.
Yeah.
I absolutely love this card. Yeah, it is. And I absolutely love this card. It's an unreal copy from a condition perspective. This card in all reality, if you look at other sales, it looks like a 7. I mean, it really does. It's a little off center left to right, but like corners, edges, the registration, it's all really, really nice. So this is more of like a 7 to me. Now, what's interesting, first of all, you got a top 5 player all time in Ty Cobb. I mean, the guy is an absolute legend. It's still so cool to me that these were inserted in actual cigarette packs over 100 years ago, and here we are looking at one of them, right? In this condition is kind of impressive in itself. I had a note down, and I'm going to stick to my guns here because I'm a man of my word. I'm going to play Wheel of Fortune here, and I'm going to bid $1 more than whatever Payne says. I'm going to keep my word.
Really? You're going 29,401.
I'll take the over. This thing, I think you're going to get a couple guys that battled it out because good luck finding a nicer sovereign back cob.
You're making me a little nervous. So there was a PSA 7 that sold, man, if my memory's shot, I want to say it sold in August of 2022 for $43,000.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think there was a world where you would come in above me. It's interesting. So you played the game. Okay. Now I don't feel so bad if I play the game. Which I might have to do on this next one.
You've been playing the game.
No.
Here we go.
I'm a fair guy. This next one could not be more different than the last two we just spoke about.
On purpose.
This is kind of against my religion to even talk about a card like this, but here we are. 2022 Panini Prism UFC Gold Patty Pimblett, rookie.
Let's go.
Serial numbered
Let's go.
to 10 total copies in a PSA Mint 9. I'm going to let you go first.
Of course. Well, look, my favorite part of putting this card in the list is thinking about your reaction when you saw it for the first time. I'm like, oh, God, Payne's going to be like, what the hell is this thing? But anybody who follows the UFC knows the personality and the swag that Patty the Baddie has. And he is one of the most exciting and entertaining up-and-coming UFC fighters with an unbelievable accent. You can barely understand the freaking guy. But he's, like I said, he's entertaining. He has a great brand. They haven't quite made him the face of the UFC yet, but if he wins a couple more key fights, he's going to end up being just that. Those who have listened to a lot of these podcasts that we've done know by now that Prism Gold out of 10 is the chase card, whether it's basketball, football, UFC. That is the brand of Prism Gold, is the chase brand outside of their black 101s. So with only 10 of these being made, UFC continue to draw big numbers and people loving the sport. This is not a crazy expensive card because he's still building as, a brand and athlete. I've got this card at $2,400.
Interesting. Okay, I'll be candid. Aside from a huge, an occasional huge main event, right? I don't watch much UFC. I was actually into it pretty hardcore from 2006 to 2009 when Thiago Pipel Alves was making his run. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember him or not. But yeah, he'd work out at the same gym as me. One of my best friends at the time was training to become an MMA fighter, and he would work out as well at America's Top Team. And from time to time, Thiago would party with us, and we knew the guy was an animal, and we won some big money betting him as he was crushing some of the bigger named older guys on the way out. He stopped, Chris Lights Out Lytle as an underdog, and then he TKO'd Matt Hughes with a flying knee as a 4-1 underdog in that fight. And then about a year later, Thiago got the big title fight in Vegas against GSP when GSP was in his prime and took him the distance. But after that, I just really haven't paid much attention. So you led the way here. Let me ask you this. Is Patty just a good UFC fighter that's an elite brand because of the Barstool push, or is he legitimately a great fighter?
It's the first.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think he's elite. He snuck out a couple fights, so I don't think his run is going to be, he's no, Bones Jones or, anybody like that. But he's very entertaining. People love him. And so that's, part of the reason why his brand is what it is.
Gotcha. Because I was doing some research here, and MMA Junkie is one of the larger UFC content companies out there. And apparently they awarded Patty with the win over Jared Gordon as the robbery of the year in 2022.
Yeah.
And
there you go.
then
but guess what? The old saying, a win is a win is a win.
Yes. And apparently he won't be fighting in UFC 286 because he's going to need ankle surgery, which I think that might impact this a little bit. There was a sale recently on eBay, a BGS 9.5. It was last week. It had a 9 centering. It sold for $4,000. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's going to get paid for. So this makes this a little bit.
That's fair.
Just based on on the seller. So I don't know if I don't know where to come in at this. I see where it's currently at. I'm going to come in below you. I'm going to come in at $22.50 on this one because I don't think that copy is going to get paid for. I see where this one's currently slotted. The injury that's going to keep him out, it sounds like the most of 2023 might hinder those prices a little bit. I'm kind of seeing some cards that sold of his a month ago that are now selling for about half now on eBay, just other different cards. So I'm going to come in below you at $22.50.
Okay. Not too shabby. I think that's, standard move on your part, but we'll see what happens.
Hey, listen. What you did last time, I don't feel regret. I don't feel bad for you. Going a buck over me. That was a move I didn't see coming. I said to myself, Jesse's a good guy. He's a stand-up gentleman. That's why I'm doing this podcast with him. And then he comes in a buck over me, and we just got to do it now.
But you also went extremely high, and I wrote down I'm going to go $1 over you, and I kept my word.
I don't know if it's going to be extremely
however
high.
You want to look at it.
I really want that card too.
Well, for you, that was extremely high. Anything over like $500 seems extremely high for you.
You're an idiot. You brought out the big guns here. This card's absolutely epic. The Ty Cobb. Okay. Speaking of another ghost like the Ty Cobb.
Damn, that's a ghost. We're going to highlight a card that hasn't sold in more than a year right now, or is serial numbered to less than 100 copies produced. We're going to talk about why this card is significant, maybe in terms of hobbies or language or just the overall rarity of it all, and why it's considered a ghost.
This is a set we talk about all the time. You just tried to put him in Dwayne Wade's tier earlier in the show. I don't know if that's right. But here we are anyways. The 2003 Upper Deck Exquisite LeBron James limited logo RPA out of 75 copies in a PSA 10. Talk to us about the importance of this card and why it's a ghost.
Yeah, this card, you see a lot of these graded by Beckett and not as many by PSA. It's the most popular insert. So outside of their traditional RPA out of 99 from 2003 Exquisite, the limited logos has a giant patch window, way bigger than even the RPA, and it's also autographed and it's numbered out of 75. This is probably the most aesthetically pleasing insert from the 2003 exquisite product, and the most popular because it is, there's 75 copies, so it's more attainable. You see more of them sell frequently, but a PSA 10 condition on this card, that's only a pop 3, so very rarely do you see these get sold. We actually sold the last PSA 10 copy about 3 years ago. The patch was not nearly as nice as this one. This one's patch is, Payne, I don't know if you've seen a lot of these limited logos. This has got to be one of the best patches I've ever seen. It's an incredible card, incredible patch, and getting it in a PSA 10 condition is really, really, really difficult. So that's why, the fact that it hasn't sold in 3 years, and this might be the best copy that exists on the planet. That's why it was my pick for Damn It's a Ghost.
It's a ghost in that grade, because let's just be candid here, and we're joking around, obviously. PSA grades thick cards like an old German ruler, okay? And so it's very difficult to get a thick card graded this well in a PSA slab. For whatever reason, they do not grade thick cards like they should. And then you add the 3-color patch with stitching, and it looks very much like the part of the Cavaliers logo on there, and just iconic set. We don't need to touch on that again, the 2003 Upper Deck Exquisites brand, right? Limited logos, which seems to be the most popular within that 2003 Exquisite run. For me, it's not mine, but I get it, right? I'm more of a Nobles nameplates or emblems of endorsement guy. I don't know why, but this is just absolutely epic, and it is a ghost in PSA 10 grade. When's the last time this sold, did you say?
About 3 years ago, we sold one.
For a LeBron rookie card, because those are selling quite frequently over the last 6 to 12 months. This one has not seemed to surface all too often, making it a ghost.
Yeah, and it's one of those cards that there's a personal reason why the seller's letting it go. He actually doesn't want to sell it, so he doesn't. The card shouldn't really be on the market, but unfortunately, it kind of has to be for personal reasons. So. That's what happens sometimes. You only get opportunities like this because things happen. So if this this is going to get sold, and whoever buys it, you likely won't see this card again for years and years and years.
Yep, just going to get stashed away.
So we doing this or are we doing that? You tell me and we'll tell you. We're going to compare two cards right now with similar value that are completely different. Let me give you an example. Let's just say for argument's sake, you have a vintage Mickey Mantle baseball card worth $30,000. But you also have a modern day Joe Burrow rookie card worth $30,000. Which one would you rather have and why? You tell us, we're going to tell you right now.
It's time for this or that, and very interesting options this week. And when I initially saw these cards, I thought to myself, how could we possibly have Nolan Ryan and Michael Jordan in the same conversation, which makes it very interesting to me. But the first card that we're going to talk about a little bit is the 2005 Leaf Limited Threads Nolan Ryan MLB Logo Man patch, 1 of 1, and we're comparing it with the 1997 Skybox Premium Golden Touch Michael Jordan in a BGS Mint 9 copy.
Yeah, look, two very different cards for a reason. I want this one to be a little interesting. So the Leaf Limited Threads Nolan Ryan 101 is a game-used MLB logo patch. It sold for about $3,000 2 weeks ago, and I chose this card because, Payne, have you actually ever seen an MLB logo Nolan Ryan card before?
They're very rare, especially in the early 2000s.
Yep. So I've talked about how I think that the MLB logo man cards have a lot of room to go up. They're not looked in the same breath yet of the NBA logo man or the NFL shields, but I think in time they will be, especially game used, right? We keep talking about game used. You've got Nolan Ryan, who's, arguably top 10 pitcher all time. He's, great brand. I absolutely love him as a player. And so I thought this card was really interesting just because when I see something that I don't see very often, then it catches my eye because I see a lot. And I don't know if I've ever seen a MLB logo man Nolan Ryan card. So actually, there's not a lot of Nolan Ryan insert style cards in general from the 2000s and beyond. So the second card, a 97 Skybox Premium Golden Touch Jordan, this card also sold for just under $3,000 a couple weeks ago. It's an incredibly popular insert from the 90s. It's a great looking card. It is a die cut, so it's very difficult to find this in high grade. There's only 10 PSA 10s. This one is a BGS 9, but I'm just setting the stage for the demand that this card has. And it's very condition sensitive, so even in a BGS 9, it's a pretty solid grade for the card. But when I'm looking at these two cards, for me, it's about. And look, I'm a sucker for game used. I'm a sucker for these MLB logo. I'm going to say there's room there. For me, it's about what I can get whenever I want, and the Golden Touch Jordans are much more available than this MLB logo Nolan Ryan. So I'm going to have to go with Nolan Ryan on this one.
We're sharing a brain here. So I think what's making this a relative competition is the Leaf Limited brand, right? Like Leaf is kind of like, people don't necessarily love it.
Sure.
But the cards, when we look at them, like the Nolan Ryan just slightly outselling the Jordan. I know Jordan market is down just a touch. 2004 was the first year Leaf did the logo mans. To your point, Nolan Ryan just doesn't have many of those, especially in the early 2000s. And we're sharing a brain, right? There's some value in baseball logo men relative to where basketball is selling. And I kind of put my money where my mouth is. You helped me probably a month or so ago acquiring a Jeter 1 of 1 logo man, which I really haven't told anybody about, but you were helpful in that process. So I really believe what we're saying here, and that baseball has some room to grow with the logo mans. There's just not enough of those. In terms of the Skybox Premium Golden Touch Jordan, it's a great card. Now, it's a die cut, which some collectors don't necessarily love. It's very dark. It's not, I wouldn't say, aesthetically pleasing. And then you dig into it a little bit and you see that Skybox released 2 different Golden Touch inserts that look kind of alike. It's not serial numbered. if you're collecting every Jordan insert, right, this makes the list. But among the guys that collect the rarest Jordan stuff, this really isn't on their radar, oddly. And to your main point, in the last 12 months, this card sold publicly roughly 40 times.
Right.
That's the difference here. When you have the ability to go out and get a one-of-one logo man of a player like Nolan Ryan stature, and you can spend the same amount of money, you just go and do it. And then you figure out when to get the Jordan later if it's really on your want list.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think that's the biggest thing here is it's really rarity. And Jordan, much bigger brand than Nolan Ryan. But, we both see the value play in the MLB logos and the ability to probably not find another one for a while. And so that's why, I think we're both going with Nolan Ryan on this one.
Absolutely. And as we wrap this show up, we know the main talking point was the best card shows in the space. It's beginning to be that time of year. Dallas coming up. National, not too far down the line. What shows is PWCC going to be at? And talk a little bit about how people can drop off their cards, have them graded, sell them. I know a lot of people don't necessarily love shipping things of value in the mail. How do they go about finding you? What shows you guys are going to be at? And talk to us a little bit about that process of giving you guys cards at shows to consign and sell.
Yeah, the beautiful thing about us when we show up at a show is anytime we do that, we're accepting submissions. So whether it's auction, vault, we accept them at the show. You get fully insured free shipping from the show back to PWCC headquarters. So if you're local and you want to bring something in and not worry about shipping it, and the expense of that, we take care of it. That's just a service that we offer at every show we go to. We don't have, because shows keep popping up, we keep adding them. The best way to figure out what shows we're going to be at is probably just pinging us on Instagram and figuring it out. But we're always at the staple shows. We're going to be at the Burbank show. There's a couple other card shows between then and now, and Mint at the end of March that we're going to be at. And, we are very active in going to shows. We're actually we're going to be in the UK this weekend doing a card show over in the UK. So if any listeners out there from the UK, look us up, hit us up on Instagram and figure out, not worrying about international shipping. We'll take care of all that. So we're everywhere from a show perspective, whether it's cards, comics, coins, video games, memorabilia. We're going to be hitting a lot of them this year. So we'll probably release a full show schedule soon, but we're still kind of wrapping up some things. So if you want to know in the meantime, just hit us up on Instagram and ask.
Before I let you go, you're a big 49er fan. What's it looking like this weekend?
I'm a little nervous. You and I talked before we started shooting today, and as long as our secondary can play solid, you don't let Devontae Smith get loose. You watch, you watch Brown, and you get some solid rush on that, good offensive line they have. I think if we can put up 24 points, we win the game.
Oof. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the front usually does a good job getting home, but the Eagles certainly have a very good offensive line, and I think ultimately when you look at the 49ers defense, not as good when they can't get pressure. The secondary a little susceptible, so that's interesting. Early on, Eagles opened about a 1.5 point favorite. We're out to like 2.8 as we speak. I will say this. There's a couple spots that flashed 3, which is the largest key number in the NFL. Those did not last long. I kind of feel like 2.5 might be the right number here, but we'll ultimately see. We're talking about this Monday night for a game that's going to be played on Sunday, but I wish you the best of luck. What are you doing for the game?
That's too far in advance. I have kids. I have no idea.
Too far in advance. I have kids. All right, I'm going to let you go. I hear it's the wife's birthday today. Go make a little magic this evening, sir.
I love it. Thanks. Happy birthday, honey.
Make sure you follow Payne on Twitter at Payne Insider. Subscribe to Bet the Board and get notified when new episodes of CardBoard Chat air on Tuesdays. And be sure to stop by PWCCmarketplace.com for all your collecting needs.